He conquered kingdoms, crowned himself emperor, and reshaped the maps of Europe. Yet on an outcrop of wind-slashed rock in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, the world's most feared commander wakes before dawn to the hiss of rain on warped shutters. Dark presses against the windows of Longwood House, and cold air threads through cracked boards, carrying the smell of damp earth and salt. Napoleon Bonaparte lies in a narrow bed built for a lesser man. His breaths are thin, shallow, measured by pain that blooms beneath his ribs like a black flower. Each inhalation is a private rebellion. He once rose to cannon fire and thundered across battlefields. Now the loudest sound in the room is the cough that shudders through him, rattling memories loose. His valet, Marchand, hovers nearby, a silent sentinel. When he lifts the candle, its flame quivers in the draft, painting the emperor's profile in trembling gold. Every line tells a campaign, the angled cheek scarred by powder flash, the lips that dictated destinies, the eyes still black with calculation. But they no longer command. They beg for warmth, for morphine, perhaps for time itself. Beyond the walls, the British sentries shift in their boots, stamping numb feet, guarding an empire reduced to a single patient. Sleep is impossible, so Napoleon summons the past. He pictures the Tuileries glittering beneath chandeliers, the hush before a symphony, when even princes dared not breathe. He tastes the metallic wind of Austerlitz, hears cavalry sabers singing like a choir of steel. The memories come unbidden, cruelly vivid, reminding him that glory is not an antidote to decay. His body rebels with another spasm. Marchand rushes forward, steadying a bowl while the emperor retches bile the color of moss. The stench of sickness fills the room, chased by lavender water that cannot mask mortality. At daybreak, the doctor enters, boots squeaking over warped planks. Francesco Antomarchi bows, though etiquette feels theatrical now. He fingers Napoleon's pulse, counts the stuttering beats, listens to a stomach roiling with the same relentless strategy that once toppled dynasties. They speak in hushed French, ulcers, carcinoma, perhaps poison. Diagnosis is irrelevant when the clock is louder than the cure. The emperor insists on standing. With effort, he swings legs over the mattress, wincing as floorboards bite his soles. Standing is victory. Walking to the chair is conquest. Swallowing laudanum is retreat. Breakfast arrives. Lukewarm broth, a slice of stale bread, watered wine. He lifts the spoon, but hand and metal betray him, rattling china. Marchand steadies the wrist. Napoleon's gaze hardens. He hates pity the way he once hated defeat, but the tremor wins. He surrenders, sips, swallows, rests. The routine repeats day after day, fatigue, remembrance, frustration, all measured against the ceaseless hiss of Atlantic wind. Later, he dictates memoirs. Paper, ink, and memory form his last weapon. He edits campaigns with ruthless precision, ensuring future generations read the version where genius eclipses hubris. Words march across pages like battalions. Margueron and Gourgaud argue footnotes, and the room stirs with ghosts of marshals long gone. Every line is both confession and propaganda. He knows history is a siege, and he lays his defenses stone by stone, even from a chair. Afternoons collapse into fever-drenched dreams. He dozes, mouth ajar, murmuring names: Josephine, Eugène, little Napoleon Francois. Sometimes he begins orders, forward, left flank, then wakes to realize there is no army, only the doctor adjusting leeches on his abdomen. Through half-open lids, he catches the garden. Spindly geraniums whipped sideways by gusts, iron sky pressing down. Somewhere a caged mynah shrieks, echoing his own captivity. Evening drags its claws. Shadows elongate, candle smoke coils like questions without answers. Memory deepens into regret. He thinks of the men who fell for him, bodies stacked in ditches from Cairo to Borodino. He weighs empire against blood and finds the scale tilting heavily. He remembers the Russian winter night when he rode past frost-rigid corpses and felt, for the first time, a chill that was not from the snow. Now that chill lives inside his marrow, wearing his flesh from within. On May 3rd, his strength gutters. Temperature spikes, voice shrinks to a rasp, skin yellows like parchment left in sun. Antomarchi leans close to catch words. Napoleon whispers requests. A portrait of his son beside the bed. The snuff box Josephine once pressed into his palm. A lock of hair she cut on their wedding night. Tokens of a life that feels less real than the pain gnawing at his gut. He asks for military boots to be placed by the bed. He wants to die a soldier. Night brings storm clouds heavy with subtropical rain. Thunder rolls across Saint Helena's basalt cliffs, juddering shutters. Inside, candles gutter. Water leaks through the roof and spatters onto floorboards. Servants rush with towels. Napoleon, half conscious, smiles faintly. The noise reminds him of cannonade. Dawn of May 4th arrives gray and waterlogged. He can no longer rise. Sheets cling to limbs, skeletal beneath blankets. Breathing turns to labor, each inhale a negotiation. Priests gather. Father Vignali recites prayers in voices blurred by sobs. Napoleon attempts to make the sign of the cross, fingers drawing an invisible campaign on his chest. Marchand wets parched lips with wine. He grimaces at the taste, yet whispers, France. The word drifts like smoke. Midday, delirium blooms. He sees regiments forming ranks across the ceiling, banners rippling in candlelight. He mutters strategy. Close the left gap. Artillery to the ridge. Order lies in tactics, and tactics stave off the terror of formless death. Antomarchi records each phrase, unsure whether it belongs to science or legend. The emperor clutches bedclothes as though reins. His feet kick weakly, spurring invisible chargers. Evening bleeds into the final vigil. Rain ceases. Air hangs thick and still, as if the island itself holds breath. Those present count seconds between exhalations. Windows rattle. Somewhere a hinge squeals. Saint Helena itself seems restless. At 5:49 on May 5th, lightning flickers along the horizon. Napoleon's gaze fixes on some point no one else can see. He whispers humbly, "Tête d'armée, Josephine." His chest lifts once, twice, then subsides. Silence floods the room. The moment stretches, fragile. Then Marchand collapses to knees, sobbing. Others cross themselves. Outside, a single cannon booms from HMS Northumberland, a courtesy salute that sounds impossibly distant. The Emperor is dead. British officials record particulars with bureaucratic thoroughness. Pulse none, pupils fixed, cause stomach ailment. Within hours, the body is washed, dressed in green uniform of the Chasseurs de la Garde, epaulettes bright against waxen skin, medals pinned where heartbeat once thundered, boots drawn onto feet still swollen, sword laid across blanket, military honors in a bedroom-turned mausoleum. On May 6th, the coffin is paraded through rain-slick paths to a willow-screened valley he once chose for its resemblance to the glades of Corsica. Soldiers lower the casket, soil drums on wood. No trumpets, no 21-gun salute, only seabirds keening. The grave is sealed beneath a simple slab. Rivals fear his name more than his remains, and no name is inscribed. Yet legends germinate in the soil. Years pass, political tides shift. France weeps for lost grandeur. Painters resurrect the emperor on canvas, schoolboys recite his victories. In 1840, the frigate Belle-Poule anchors at Saint Helena. French sailors exhume the casket under watch of British Marines and bear it homeward through slate-colored seas. Paris erupts when the cortege arrives. Black horses draw a hearse draped in velvet down boulevards lined with millions. Old veterans hammer canes against cobbles in salute. Young poets cry freely. Drums roll. As the coffin enters Les Invalides beneath a dome of gold, torches flare, casting tremulous halos on marble. In the hush, a voice intones, "Bring back to France the ashes of the Emperor." At last Napoleon rests among his own. The island keeps secrets no triumphal funeral can capture. Under Saint Helena's lashing rains, he once walked garden paths at dusk, tracing loops until mud-coated boots and stars emerged like distant bivouac fires. He named the olive trees after victories, Jena, Marengo, Ulm, then stopped when wind carried laughter from British officers' mess. Some nights he lifted a telescope toward the horizon, searching for French sails he knew would never come. The act was not hope, but defiance, a final campaign against oblivion. Sometimes to amuse his entourage, he staged miniature councils of war. Maps spread across the billiard table, pins moved, cavalry figurines tilted. At the end he dismissed them, triumphant, forgetting for a moment that the battles were cardboard dreams. When reality returned, it hit like grape shot. He slumped in the green felt chair, staring at dice that refused to roll another 6. Letters written in his slanted hand reveal a mind oscillating between resignation and revolt. He jokes that when he was young, he believed himself greater than Alexander. Now he is reduced to Diogenes, living in a barrel of rain. The quip conceals a wound deeper than cancer, the humiliation of obscurity. Contrast that with Europe's memory, chiseled into stone. Avenues in Milan still bear his name, artillery schools teach his maxims, and tourists drift under gigantic canvases where he rides forever beneath flags, as if the painter froze glory at gunpoint. Tour guides mention that on his deathbed he chose the uniform of a colonel, not the coronation mantle. Perhaps he understood that the simplest cloth spoke truer than the fleur-de-lis of an emperor. Consider the physical space where he ended. Longwood House damp with fog and infested by rats. The roof leaked, plaster peeled, furniture warped. He complained that the British intended him to die of climate rather than justice. Engineers proposed repairs. Whitehall denied the expense. So the conqueror of Venice and Vienna fought his last campaign against mildew, wielding buckets and curses. On stormy nights, lightning skittered across the South Atlantic like cavalry charges made of light. The emperor would sit by the shutter, counting seconds between flash and thunder, calculating distance as if tracking artillery. Marchand recalled how the old commander's fingers twitched, unconsciously mapping trajectories in the air. Then the wind would roar and drown thought, and Napoleon, suddenly frail, would whisper that he heard the music of destiny closing ranks. During the final 48 hours, the Atlantic grew unseasonably calm. Napoleon drifted in and out, sometimes lucid enough to ask for battle reports. What news from Europe? As though centuries lay ahead instead of hours. No one had the heart to tell him Louis XVIII sat on the throne, and the tricolor was banned. They answered with vague assurances. Europe was quiet, France vigilant. He nodded, satisfied, and slipped deeper, breath dipping like a lantern guttering in wind. Moments before death, he clasped Marchand's hand, nails bruised under pale skin, and managed a half-smile, the expression of Austerlitz, of the morning he left Josephine at Malmaison. He tried to speak, but only air emerged. Then his fingers relaxed, a small sigh, a twitch at the jaw, nothing. Candlelight steadied. The storm's echo retreated. The century exhaled. Historians will debate whether greatness absolves brutality. His civil code enshrined equality before law, yet his wars burned a continent. He abolished feudalism and sold millions of souls into conscription. And still, across dusty parade grounds, Young cadets march in step he standardized, their drums tapping a rhythm first beaten under his gaze. In literature, he appears as Titan and trickster, Prometheus and Satan, hero and butcher. Each writer captures a fragment, none the whole. Perhaps only those last days, stripped of pomp, reveal him. A mortal who loved Europe so fiercely he tried to clasp it in iron arms, and when the embrace tightened, it shattered. Listen. Wind brushes grass atop his former grave on Saint Helena. Waves chew cliffs, carving sea caves that moan like distant drums. Tourists hike the Jacob's Ladder to view the Valley of the Tomb, reading plaques in many languages. They imagine the emperor walking there, hat against rain, planning victories that would never be fought. In the hush of twilight, they swear they hear footsteps that stop when they turn to look. Perhaps that is his final victory, to be irremovably present in absence, to haunt imagination so deeply that oceans and centuries cannot wash him away. He wanted immortality, and in a manner both tragic and triumphant, he achieved it. Not through living forever, but through dying memorably. So when your eyes close tonight, remember the solitary lamp in Longwood throwing gold onto cracked walls, while outside surf pounds the stones. Remember a hand clutching sheets like a battlefield standard, and a whisper floating above the roar, France, Armée. It is the sound of a man discovering that even emperors climb the same narrow pass at the end, guided only by memory and sorrow. And should you wake before dawn, listen for distant hoofbeats in the rain. They belong to a ghostly cavalcade cresting the horizon, banners invisible yet undeniable. In their midst rides a small figure in a gray coat and cocked hat, head bowed against the weather, pressing on toward some perpetual campaign. The world has moved on, but the myth rides forever, seeking a victory that no morning can finally deliver, marching through the dreams of generations, followed by the hush of cannons long fallen silent.